In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Tonight on America in Black and White, we explore the journey of a man who embodies what it means to lead with intention, serve with purpose, and build with vision. In a world where innovation moves fast and community often struggle to keep pace, there are individuals who stand at the intersection, translating progress into access and opportunity into legacy. Gregory Hannah-Jones is one of those rare leaders, a top 25 Georgia 40 under 40 honoree, a strategist shaped by the rigor of Microsoft and Amazon, and a public servant dedicated to strengthening the fabric of DeKalb County, Georgia. His story is not just about professional excellence, it is about mentorship, community uplift, and the belief that leadership is measured not by titles, but by lives you elevate. From boardrooms of tech giants to the board meetings of the 100 Black men of DeKalb County, Gregory has carved a path defined by discipline, compassion, and a relentless commitment to empowering the next generation. And like many great leaders, he stands on the shoulders of giants: Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Oprah Winfrey, three icons whose philosophies shaped his worldview, his leadership, and his mission. Tonight, we dive into the story behind the accolades, the purpose behind the service, and the man behind the movement. This is episode 82. This is Gregory Hannah-Jones, and this is America in Black and White. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Mr. King, how's it going?
Oh, just great. What about yourself?
I can't complain. As you was reading the biography, I'm like, wait, who is that? I would like to meet that person. I'm honored. That's such an honor. Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that.
You're very much welcome. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Thank you for joining us, and I hope this is as informative to you as it is to me. And thank you just for being a part of the journey with me. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, look, before we get started, there are already some comments here.
Oh, wow.
And this is one, I'll put it on the screen for you. You are always welcome to acknowledge. But this is from, looks like Paco Brito. And they said hello. And I want to tell them hello and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
So what I like to do first is I like to give the people the opportunity to just learn and to know a little bit about who you are before we get into all these wonderful things that you're doing. So can you tell us what early experiences shaped the leader you are today?
That's a great question. So I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. And, there's a whole saying that says, it takes a village to raise this child. And I can really attest for that. So, I was surrounded by both sides of the grandparents, and my mom, the best thing that she did for me was put me in a smaller school. So because she knew I needed that extra attention. But I remember there was a situation where I was with my grandfather on my dad's side, and every Sunday he would get the New York Times delivered to him. And I was at a very young age, and I would find the most interesting, what I thought was the most interesting topic of that week, and I would read it to him. And for example, I would be like, "Papa, this is what they said," because I was trying to impress him. And as time went on, he would say, stop. I don't want to hear from you anymore. They said, I want you to be the one that says it. And that to me was the formation of independent thinking. And I think I was 6 or 7 at the time. So when the paper would come from that day on going forward, it would not be they said, it would be more of the lines of here's the information, here's what I got from the information, and here are the 2 solutions to that. So surrounded by a lot of light and love and just really giants, as you mentioned before, of whom I stand on solid ground on. And part of that school I was in, Greater Miami Academy, it was very small. Uh, in ninth grade, I made a conscious decision that when I graduated, I was going to go far away to build my career. And all of my friends didn't believe me. So senior year came, and the majority of them went to Southern and Tennessee, and others went to Oakwood. But there was no one that went to Walla Walla University from my school. And spoke to it with my mom, and she said, "Hey, look, I only got you got $45. You got a one-way ticket. You had to make it work." So I had to make it work. So I started at Walla Walla as a freshman, of course, uh, as a janitor and a mailman, bringing home $65 every 2 weeks, my first check. And by that time, I was also sending money home. So just learning those lessons at a young age. And then the deanship came for me really young. A year and a half after that, I was a dean of students, a student dean of students while I'm in school. So can you imagine being in a classroom with one of the students who are your peers, and then the next hour you're sitting on a council deciding their fate? So I had to really discern what responsibility was at a very, very young age. And that in turn brought me to stay in a dean's position for a couple years, and then the first African American dean for the school, and then also the first one to graduate first in his class, the president, first blacks, and the school started in 1892. So at the time, I didn't know it was about making history or opening doors. I just was like, this hasn't been done. Maybe I could do something different with it. And as I get older, I realized the impact that was happening. So it's a little bit about me and how it shaped my story.
So, growing up, who first recognized your potential?
I would have to say my grandmother, my grandma, Mimi, as we call her. She's the one that said, "This one is gonna is gonna blow him out the water." She would say that all the time. I didn't know what that was or what that meant at the time, but she knew at a very young age that something was going on.
Okay. So let me ask you this: what was the moment you realized you were called to serve?
That's a great question. Hmm. What was the moment that I realized that I was called to serve? I remember being in college. It was when I got the RA job, because you got to go through the ranks before you get to the dean. And a lot of people get it for the free room and the free board, but I knew that it was bigger than me, because I believe it or not, I still have my rankings. Because you get rated on performance and all that. And when I saw that I had 100% across the board, because they rate you on attentiveness and how you approach the guys and this and that, and etc., and your openness and your willingness to be a positive influence. But when I saw those numbers, I was like, wow, this is bigger than me. And then, of course, obviously the deans at the time saw it, and then that's when my rise came. So it was sophomore year in college. That's when I'm like, I could be onto something with this.
So, when you thought that there could be something more to that, what did you think? What were you thinking as you were imagining your growth, your expansion? What were some of the things that you were thinking that you were actually going to be doing in your professional career?
I've always wanted to be a business executive. I always wanted to be in big tech, and that came from just watching interviews. I remember there was a 60-minute interview touring the Microsoft headquarters back in the 90s, I believe. And I was watching that with family. I'm like, one day I want to work there. So just seeing, and I really truly believe in the power of manifestation as well. And 4 days out of college, I was able to get the call to get the job there. So yeah, just seeing it, and also not only manifesting it, but just knowing that this is possible for yourself. So I always had that. And there's this book that I read in college called The Alchemist. So that really also, I still have it to this day, helped me get to that realization.
So, how did your upbringing influence your sense of responsibility?
Oh, that's a great question. I had very strict grandparents. I had a very, on all sides, especially my grandmother, who I love so much. And then my school was strict. I went to a Seventh-day Adventist academy, so the parents had to sign waivers on us getting popped, and I was believe it or not, my mom was the first one that signed it. So, I would get popped really a lot, but not knowing that they were teaching me discipline and punctuation and yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. I learned that in fourth, fifth grade. So that, and then of course you bring that to high school and then to college. That was the foundation of my discipline and how I was able to make sure I show up 100% because I saw it. Yeah, I saw it all the time and felt it, pun intended.
So, what challenges did you face? People don't see in your resume.
What challenges do I face that people don't see?
Did you
Oh,
face?
did I face? I wouldn't
Mhm.
consider them challenges. I would. I never then and now consider myself a victim if I didn't get a job or if I didn't get a position. I always thought that wasn't the right place and time for me. And there was never. I'm never, fortunately, by God's grace, I never was an imposter syndrome. I never had that as well. So I can't really say that I could quantify that with an answer because I never, if I didn't get something, it was not pretty much on their discretion. It was just like that was not for me. That wasn't meant for me. That was the mentality that I have.
So, what's a defining moment that changed your trajectory?
In career, in life, or in both.
In your everyday life, your everything. Something
Uh,
that happened that changed your trajectory.
okay, yeah, that's a good question. I remember there. I was watching. This gets back to the Oprah person. I was watching an interview that she was doing with Larry King Live back in 1998 with my grandmother, and how confident this sister was. And I was like, wow, she was. I don't know. I think I was 8 or 9 years old at the time, and she's like, I have to fly back to Chicago when we're done. And he's like, how are you gonna get there? And she's like, on my jet. And I never saw a black person have that kind of confidence at my young age. And I'm like, wait a minute, she looks like me. Maybe I can do that one day. So that was 8 or 9 when I saw someone who was confident in their skin and was able to go far, and not only go far, but really leave the door open for others to follow. So I think that was one of many defining moments for me um, in my life, for sure.
So, who poured into you when you needed guidance the most?
It takes a village. I keep a close knit of friends, Tirza, Rohan, Jen, Parnell. That's very dear to me. I would say, but the most I would say, my grandmother, my grandparents poured into me the most. That they were that nurturing guide that I needed, especially at a younger age, someone that I could always count on and talk to. So I really say probably my grandmother. But yeah, again, it took a village. But the one who the mentors throughout the years, some of them I'm still in contact with, but definitely my grandmother for sure was the one that poured into me the most, for sure.
So, what values from your childhood still guide you today?
Having a great attitude will take you as far than your wildest dreams. That's one. Discipline, period. That's two. And I learned that very early. And grace. I mean, the loudest person in the room, and I learned this early as well, is more than 9 times out of 10 is not really the one that's right. I mean, if you have all these things, and and I was blessed to have so much opportunity and all these awards, but I was never the one that's going to shove it in your face. So I learned very young that always stay gracious, and
Mhm.
that really shed my light rather than me saying, "Hey, I have this," and hey, no, I never really did that. But the attention came anyway because you don't have to do that if you are that it factor. So
Mm. So, how do you stay grounded while navigating high pressure environments?
I that is a great question. I strive best under high pressure and high natured environment. And when I started to do hot yoga, this is my 14th year doing it. That's what helped me because what it does is that it stresses your body out for 90 minutes. So when you get outside of the studio, you can really handle and take on really high stress environments. So yoga, discipline, those are the two foundationals that I go to when I'm outside of the studios and having to deal with something very stressful, and also my faith. I'm very strong on my faith. Those are the three things for sure, for sure.
So, as you mentioned your faith, so is it like you grew up being strong in religion, or is this one of those things that advanced over time that you learned a lot more about yourself that you're able to succumb and come within
I, w-
what your spirituality is?
I would say both. We had to go to church on Sundays, and of course, being in a church school, there is, excuse me, chapel and all those things. But as you grow older, so in the college years, even though it was a Seventh Day Adventist college, they still gave us the information, but it was okay. This is how and where you could interpret it. So, and again, that foundation of faith. So it evolves over time, and I'm a human being. There's days where I fall short. There's days where I question my faith, of course, but I oftentimes when that happens, because we're all human, I always go back to the why. You always got to go back to the why.
Mhm. So, what does legacy mean to you personally?
What does legacy mean to me? Making sure that you leave the door that was paid for you bigger than how you found where you found it. And as people, and I've experienced this, and I'm not afraid to say that we have this crab in a bucket mentality that, oh, there's only very little, then I'm gonna have it, and I can't. So I never really believed in that. So Maya Angelou says, when you give, when you learn, you teach. So always leaving the door wider than I found it. So for example, being the first to graduate first in his class as an African American at Walla Walla. There's a student that is now in student government, the first black, all these years later, recently called me up asking for advice. So those are the things like, what was your experiences were when you were in college, or how did you overcome? So making sure that he is set up for success, because there are going to be times where people think that you don't belong in those spaces. Yeah, you belong, and this is why I belong. So I think legacy is all about making sure you leave the door bigger and wider than you found it. For sure. For sure.
Can you tell us why is that an important thing to you?
Because someone has done that for me. A principal, Dr. McKenzie, that I had in high school, a mentor of mine, bless his heart, bless his soul, he said that if any time that you see a turtle on a fence post, he had some help. So it's been done to me. That's the reason why I'm here, and everything that I am and I could be today. And at the very least, each mentor for the majority of the time told me, because I'm like, okay, how can I ever repay you? This is a debt that I can't repay. They would always say, just make sure you leave the door open or pay it forward. So it's my responsibility to make sure I'm paying it forward to the next person that comes in. Because as we both know, the system is not designed for people who look like us.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's transition over to your work in professional excellence and career development.
Okay.
Can you tell us, how did your time at Microsoft shape your approach to leadership?
So fortunately, I had the experience of student dean, and I did a lot of things at Walla Walla, which really helped a lot because it was sort of like transferable skills in some ways. But to me, it was also a wake up call as well, because you see a lot of people who are just as good or better than you. So it was also a gut check as well. So not only do I have to be up on my game, but I have to soothe my ego a little bit and say, hey, look, you're no longer the unicorn here. And those were important lessons that I had to learn. But working for Microsoft fresh out of college was something that I will never forget. It was an incredible experience, and it taught me a lot about scale. It taught me a lot about how to navigate big rooms and big situations. And really going back to that little kid who was watching Bill Gates get interviewed in the living room, touring the campus and being on the campus for almost a decade, that was pretty commendable. It was an experience that I would never forget.
Tell us about that environment and how that contributed to your leadership today.
Wow. That environment was it was fast paced. It was an environment where, of course, I had a lot of good mentors there, but I actually had to really learn really fast. And one of my managers would say to all of us that don't come to me without two solutions. So this is something that I learned my first year there. So when we would come to him, and there's the formula behind that is that you would already think of the problem before coming to him. And not only have you already thought of the problem, but you have two solutions. So you really don't need me, right? So just learning those lessons, and there's so many, but that was the biggest lesson that I learned from the company, from my time there.
Yeah, but how did that shape your leadership today?
It taught me patience. It taught me humility. It taught me learning how to scale on a global level, and also just knowing that even though all these things and you're having all these opportunities happen to you very young, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, how are you leaving that door open? Because there are going to be others for the next person that comes in who looks like you. So that's how it shaped me. I like my patience and my temperance, and it's how I still use that method with the two solutions even to this day. And I learned that back in 2011, 2012, I believe. So yeah, those are some of the examples that has you know
So
transferred.
so as you think about that, and if you just thinking about young Gregory in that situation, as you went into that and knowing that you were fresh out of college, you're getting this dream job, you're working where you wanted to work.
Mhm.
Did you have in your mind that you were going to go into Microsoft and pretty much just take control more than be the best that you can be, but set a standard that would be second to none? Did you think like that, or what were you thinking?
Not the first several years. I mean, you're lucky to get in the door and just get the badge. If I'm being honest, because I think there's 500,000 people that apply there every year. So the fact that I was called, so the first few years it's a wow factor. So, but realizing the why that you're there and the impact that you're making, that came probably the third or fourth year. Um, but yeah, it was. I would say, if I'm being honest, the first few years was just like, oh my god, how did you pull this off? And going back to God's grace, yeah. So that's how I was able to navigate that for sure.
So, what lessons from Amazon still influence your work today?
Well, lessons from Amazon. Uh, s- Scale faster and fail fast. Those are the two that sticks that sticks out for me. And knowing that, and also being okay with failing. I think that's a big one. I wasn't okay with failing at one point, but that company has told me that it's okay to fail, but you got to make sure it's fast and figure out a way to also build. It also taught me how to be a builder as well. Uh, yeah, so those are the foundational things that I learned there. But both companies really shaped me and who I am today, and how I was able to transfer that to the government sector and as well. So it was definitely an interesting experience for sure.
What are some pointers that you can give to some of the younger kids that are going into situations with both of those companies now? What are some tips that you can give them that can help them be successful today?
Learn as much as you can. Uh, Make sure you absorb a lot, and also in those companies, I'm not. Humility is one thing, but having a great attitude will bring you as far as your wildest dreams. Because if they see that you think that you know it all, that's not a good thing. But also make sure that you're great in everything that you bring, because you're there for a reason. The interview process is extremely rigorous, so you're brought in there for a reason. So take advantage of the time that you have there, and learn as much as you can, because you're learning alongside the best in the business for sure. For sure.
So, what skills from the tech world translate best into public service?
I would say temperance is one of them. I would say discernment is another one. Grace under fire, uh, uh, under grace under pressure as well is another one. But also the ability to build and to, but I had to, for me personally, I had to learn how to not taper it down, but also make sure I realign my expectations, because I'm not working on a global scale anymore. So it also learned me how to also depend on my teammates, because we're all cohesively trying to get to one goal together. So I think those are the core things that I've learned that were transferable from the tech world into the government sector for sure.
Okay. So, what does being a management analyst require that people might not expect?
Um, that you work with a great set of people, like Brenda, there's Patrice, Alicia, and our mighty director. There's Mike, of course. Alicia, Penny. So you work alongside uh, a great people who are also trying to make the county better, under the direction of um, Madam CEO Lorraine Cocker Johnson, who is the first African American female CEO to have that spot. So you're seeing all this happen in real time, this Black excellence. But again, for me, I'm observing how you see these big giants in the industry making sure that they're doing it for the community and for the county, and that's that's something that I don't think money can buy. And in my position as well, I was able to learn and meet different departments. So now I know how the police force works and how the fire station works. Just meeting people and seeing what their worlds are behind the scenes is something that uh, was really intriguing to me. But again, everyone's trying to get to the same goal. So I admire that a lot.
So, how do you balance innovation with government structure?
I would say, and this is I'm a little bit over a year into the government, a year and some months. So I'm still, there's also a line that stays with me is like you got to observe, and then of course you come in as, so there's an organic move, as opposed to when in tech you just go and you go in and you build. So I'm just learning how to observe and ask questions and make sure I'm leaning on those subject matter experts who's been doing it for 8+ years. I have a person on my team who's been with the company for 25 years. So just learning how government works in totality as well, and also balancing how that works with what the needs of the county and what the needs of the people are, and coming forth with that solution.
So, yeah. So in saying that, tell us, how does that translate with the work that you may have to do in the community? How does how do you take that structure and you move that out into the community and you work with people to help people? How does that work?
So right now I'm in the public relations department with the watershed department, and in DeKalb County. And so, for example, we went to a senior living facility, and how we were able to evangelize the greatness and the needs of making sure that we preserve the water, and making sure that there's no fogs and there's no clogs that are in the sink. So just making sure that the constituents, and they appreciate that, are getting the information about what we're doing and how we're doing it in the county, so that better serves them as people. Because there's sometimes that they don't know what we're doing and how we're doing it. So making sure that we pass on along that information, and making sure it's transferred to the constituents. And mind you, I'm still learning. This is a completely new area for me. So I'm learning and I'm growing as I'm doing it. So yeah, so far so good. So far so good.
So how do you balance innovation with? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Okay.
What's the most rewarding part of your role in DeKalb County?
Are you saying is that from a business or a mentoring standpoint?
Both business and mentoring.
For business, I would say working with a great set of people who inspire me and who push me as much as they push and inspire themselves. And for the mentorship, and we'll get into the 100 shortly, is having parents and students call me and say, "Hey, my child was, had a great experience under the Leadership Academy with you being there. So thank you for that." So, for example, today I got a text message from a parent showing me, the grades of a student that, I was mentoring throughout the year, and how that person is maturing into young leaders. So that is the most rewarding on the mentor side of things. So it all correlates together, I guess.
So, what's the biggest misconception about working in government?
The biggest misconception, I would say that government is slow. That was what I would hear a lot. And from working in it and knowing how things work, um, both on the county side and also on the watershed side, that it's not as slow as people think. And now that we have a CEO that's also has that business centric background, so she's bringing that acumen to the county. It's her ability to move things faster. I think it's going to be a great service to the county. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is how slowly government is. And it's really not.
So, tell us about the PR department. What do you do in PR that's so relative to your success today? Tell us about PR.
So public relations, primarily within watershed management, handles any and all things communications. So that's press releases, that's things that needs to go out with the county, that's things internal, and it's all tying to what we do within the public relations department. We also go do school visits as well. So throughout the school year, when schools are in session, we go out there, we evangelize to to our students, the importance of water conservation. Michael is great because he shows the students, what the difference between tap water and all these different water resources are. So it really is the groundwork on how messaging, both internal and external, gets out.
So, do you have the actual opportunity of those that work underneath you to do like some kind of training that gets them ready to go out into the community when you're doing the work that you're doing? That maybe as you're doing what you're doing from a mentoring perspective, that maybe they have some other role that plays a part in making that a success. How do you train those people to do those things?
So fortunately, I'm coming into watershed management, and they're actually training me. I'm still in
Okay.
I'm still in the training phase of it, which is great. So I'm seeing again these subject matter experts that's been in these roles 8+ years do it, and they've been really gracious with showing me the ropes. But yeah, I'm in the training phases of how government works, and primarily this department. I'm grateful because it's all a cohesive unit in which we work together on.
How do you approach problem solving in complex systems?
Um, for me, it of course it depends on the problem, but foundationally you got to figure out what the root cause is, and from there you work backwards on figuring out the Nancy drew of many things: the who, what, where, when, how, and kind of work backwards from there. But really figuring out what the root cause is and kind of working backwards from there with those 5 questions. But oftentimes, in my work and in my life as well, there's no time to go through that process. So that's why, that situational awareness is something that's heavy as well. It's something that I lean on to heavily. So a culmination of those things really help me when I have complex problems. But again, I come from an area and a situation where I work best under stress. So that's when I really can get my gloves on and get to work.
So tell us, what's a project you're most proud of?
What's a project that I'm most proud of? Oh God, I would say the work that I have done with the 100 Black Men. That would say something that's I'm most proud of, because again, that didn't come on by it actually did come by accident. I was getting my hair done by Olama, who's a good friend of mine, and she was like, "You need to be in the 100." And I'm like, "No, I'm not interested, because if it's this frat thing, because they I've been asked to be in I think the Kappas for several times, and I'm just that's not something that I was interested in." And she's like, "No, no, I think you should do it." So the next week, she saw the president of the chapter at a lunch somewhere, and she pulled him and said, "You got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy." So now I come in, and we eventually have lunch, but I come in, I haven't done research on this man at all. So I come in for lunch, and I'm like, "Hey, look, I know about this. Thank you for your time, but I want to make sure that I'm not going into something that's a big boys club, because I'm not. That's If I wanted to do it, I would have done it." So I think him seeing me being honest about what it was and the value add that I was bringing, he's the one that recommended me personally, and not knowing that I was talking to a Levitt, who's a mentor of mine today, uh, Gregory Levitt Jr. And I would have I would have probably filtered it a lot more, but I was like, I'm not really interested. I was very standoffish on it a little bit, but he actually saw that, okay, this man is really for the work and not for the gram, or not for the advantages that, or the prestige, if you will, that the 100 can bring. And that to me was a superpower that I had.
Wow. So when you did get the opportunity to join the 100, I mean, what has been your observation now? How do you feel about that?
That it's for the most part, it's really centered around the children. I love the fact that because I've served as the education co-chair for a couple of years. So the fact that we have students that come out, and there's a leadership academy with 250 students that we have throughout the whole year. But when they come out and they graduate, some of them been there in that school for that academy for 5 years, and it's on Saturdays. But they come out, graduate, and they get these leadership skills that they've learned that we teach them every other Saturday, and they say, "Hey, look, I'm a better person," and we teach boys and girls from middle to high school. I'm a better person because of this leadership academy. Those are the aha moments that I get from being a part of it, for sure. I don't do politics at all. I don't handle the drama at all, but it's really about the work and making sure that we open the doors for the young students. So yeah.
So, how do you measure impact in your work?
How do I measure impact on my work? It's again the stories that I get, the phone calls that I get. I get calls. I have to sometimes turn my phone. It's the when the parents say, "Hey, look, my child is better because you've been in their lives and you've impacted them in a way that I couldn't do it," or the 100 has impacted them in a way that was not done before. Those are the moments in which I can measure success. Again, I was never one, and this is how I was taught at the younger age too. I'm not here for the applause or any other award. Been there, done that, but it's really more about how I can impact and show impact of others. So when others are coming to me or coming to other people saying this is my experience, that's something that's touching to me and something that's how I measure that, and I get it all the time. So that's a blessing for sure.
So let's move over to your work in Dean of Students and Chair of Leadership. What inspired you to step into educational leadership?
That's a great question. So the dean, I think there's a so the dean of students was in college. So that was I was a student dean of students for 2 to 3 years. So it was a part of I was telling you earlier the RA and the head RA and the student dean. So that's where that part came in. And what got me in there is I saw my peers needing help, and I was sent off to the head dean at the time, and he said, "Hey, look, I have this position for you. I know that you've been doing an RA for 1 year. I would love for you to be a part of it." And that's what got me with that. But with the chair position, the co-chair position with the 100, after 1 year, the president and the president-elect came to me and they said, "Hey, look, I think that you would be great as a co-chair for the Leadership Academy." So I was asked for to be the co-chair on that. So that's how I was able to be impactful in that way. So again, it was these opportunities that came to me, and because they saw the work and they saw um, how hungry I was, and then that's how I was able to rise in those ranks at that time.
Tell us, how does being a dean of students shape your understanding of youth needs?
Oh God, that's a great question. Oh, and back then it was bad, but now it's I can only imagine, with the social media and this and that. But I think it was very unique in a lot of ways because I was a student and I was also a dean, right? So I was living many of the situations that the students were going through. So I think more on a humanistic level, it helped me to level with them and figure out what solutions can I, because it's not always about throwing the book down as we think it is, but also trying to figure out what the healthy middle ground is. I think that's what really contributed to my success as a dean in school, in college. But for the Leadership Academy, I had a great co-chair, that Leon Cohen, who was alongside me, and we worked together. We had great people like Simone, who took the helms from the administrative operational level. And then, so when you have great people that's running the machine, that's helping you run the machine or build the plane as you're flying it, of course, there's going to be bumps and turbulence as part of the plan, but you're able to fly that machine and know that the North Star is always going to be the children. Like, what sort of impact are we leaving for these kids and experience we're leaving for the kids?
Well, as you think about that, and moving forward into leadership with such a great organization as the 100, can you tell us, while since you've been a part of the 100, what are some of the things that you feel you have gotten most from that organization that's helped you give back to the community in developing these young people that you work with?
Great question. I think on one piece of it is there's a lot of people that are in the 100 that have similar backgrounds, or also or are entrepreneurs. So they come with a set of skills so they can so the students can say, hey, look, here's this tech guy, but also here's this man that runs several businesses. And if they're teaching entrepreneurship, they're showing the students how they were able to build something from scratch. So when you're around like-minded people who have similar backgrounds, who have mastered their profession, that's how you're able to navigate. But really, that's how you're able to organically pour into those students and those children. So I think that's the driving factor. We have a lot of individuals who are subject matter experts, who are builders, who are entrepreneurs, not just with tech, but with their own businesses, driving the force and driving the needle forward.
So, what leadership principles guide your work with students?
Foundationally is earns trust and integrity. Also, just honesty. So, if you're honest with me, then we can work something out. But if there's not a level of honesty, then the credibility is gone down a little bit. And also, the parents have to be on board as well, because they're only with us, a couple hours a week, every other week. So the parents do not have an invested effort into this. What are we doing? So those are some of the things that I really, and the student, and we also have a responsibility to make sure that we're not. Because there are some comments that we had earlier that this is Saturday school. So how are we not preaching to these students, but we're actually doing things, taking them outside of the classroom. We took them to space camp, NASA one year, and making sure they see things and see college campuses and experiences that they've never done before, so they can know that it's possible. So hands-on has been really important for sure.
So, how do you cultivate discipline and accountability in young leaders?
So I'm not. That's a good question. And this is where the Dean Gregory Hannah-Jones comes back into play. I don't have to yell. I don't. I think it's all about how you carry yourself and your tone. So when they see, hey, look, like, what are you doing? I'm not. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And they see the why, but they understand that, hey, I'm not here to argue with you on a point. I'm just trying to help them to think independently. Most of the time that works. Of course, every leader or every person has their different style, but my style is more on the lines of trying to get the why as to why they're doing it. And also to see that, hey, being graceful and having a great attitude gets you far. You don't have to be this boastful person that has all this hubris that does things for the gram, because that stuff is not lasting. But so if they see you emulate that with how you present yourself and how you present your work, they're more likely to gravitate to that as well.
Well, but it sounds like what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're doing a lot to teach these kids how to critically think and be successful in the future.
Absolutely.
And so if that's the case, can you tell me why is the critical thinking part so important that they need to understand?
Again, they're going into a space where the system, and I say this, was it designed for people like them? And of course, they're in some ways, I say that, they're coming in at an advantage, that we have to work twice or three times as hard to get whatever that we can get. And now on top of that, they're coming into the age of AI. So how can you make sure that you're above average to ensure that you're hitting that mark? And it all comes down to, some of them I use that two solution thing that I learned early in my career. So when they come to me with things, I don't want to hear it. What are your two solutions? So helping them to critically walk through those things is something that's very important. So again, that's me getting what I learned, not only from experience, but from my teachers and from my mentors, and making sure that I'm pouring into these young students what I've got from it.
So what does effective leadership education look like today?
Effective leadership and education looks like today is it's a system in which the parent, not only the student, but the parent and the teacher are all on one accord to make sure the student, and the student has to be there as well, equally yoked to ensure that they're going to the next level. Because if you only have just the parent, or if it's just the teacher, or if it's not the teacher, it all has to come on one level playing field. And then that's when the mentors come in. Because a lot of times, we have some students that grew up in one parent households, or growing up in one parent households. So that's where the village comes in, and everyone has a role to play in ensuring that these students are successful and they're stars in their role.
Now, what I want to ask you, because besides that being a good question, that was a great answer. But let's take this a step further, and I'm going to
Please.
play devil's advocate,
Okay.
because I'm sure that you're a great problem solver. And so when you think about this and what you're trying to do, and what you're setting this out to be from that educational perspective, how do you expect this to be successful when equity is not there?
That's a tough one. Um, in the climate that we're in now, it's extremely difficult. And it also goes back to the science, and it goes back to the teaching that I was taught with my professor, and how this is how she would always tell me, Greg, remember to know your audience. And that to me, that's me evangelizing to the students. Remember to know your audience. So how you're acting and how you're showing up in this room cannot be the same how you're showing up in other rooms. And your ability to move and to adapt into these different situations is going to take you far. And I think with our students, especially if they come through the program as a freshman and graduate the senior, if they're coming into college, they're already at an advantage because they have the Leadership Academy from the 100 on their portfolio. Not a lot of students have that. I wish I had that growing up. So they're coming in with an advantage, but it all just barrels down to knowing your audience and knowing how to adapt in those different situations, and also knowing that you cannot show up in one room the same as you're showing up in another room. And saying this objectively, that the system wasn't designed for people who look like us, but we're not going to fall victim resulting in that. What are we going to do about it? That's the right.
I got to say, I do love that, but just so let's take it from the realistic perspective. In said situation, if there's no equity, but you're trying to do the best that you can, what quantifies and qualifies what you do?
That is the $1 million. I don't think I can. I don't think I can answer that. I mean, it's situational. Um, I think what we can do, what we do from a 100 level, from a mentorship level, is make sure that we prepare these kids as much as possible for what's out there. But again, at a point where we're objective and not saying you cannot fall victim of this. This is what's ahead of you. But again, that critical thinking, what are you going to do to make sure that you overcome what's ahead of you? What Because if you come in there and saying, okay, you're not going to, well, why are they here, right? So you're giving them a realistic approach as to what's out there, but also tools in which they can navigate. Going back to that, know your audience, these rooms and these waters that are going to be very challenging for them.
You know what I like about the good work that you do is, you do that as best as you can with what you have. But the point that I was just making is why I say let me play devil's advocate
Please,
is
yes,
is because this is something that I always put a point in when, especially speaking from the educational perspective, because if we don't, just thinking about this as a broad perspective, if we don't do what's necessary to teach our young kids on our own, with our
mhm,
own system, with everything that we know is to be true to be successful, then they're probably pretty much walking out there getting ready to fall off a cliff.
right.
Because if we have to rely on these educational systems, we know that they're not going to do it for us.
Yes, and I'm gonna fight you a little bit on there because I went to
Okay.
I was born and raised in Florida, which is very culturally diverse, as you know. But going to Seattle and going to the Washington State, where it's not, there's a lot of things that I had to learn and build on my own, but I had the awareness and the foundation and
Mhm.
the wherewithal of who I was as a person, right? Because there's many people like me in Walla Walla that weren't doing what I was doing. I didn't have so I didn't there weren't any systems that I had to lean on to for me to learn that were built to go out and do it, get it. So, but it takes a different type of temperance to have that. Um,
Okay.
that's why I say it's you give them enough, but also the realizations that yeah, there are times where you can't cripple them to create. So there's a fine line. There's a fine
Mhm.
line. It's possible to survive um, in a PWI. You know, I didn't think from it was really possible. I felt like I was creating. I think it was a very small group of us, but I was creating a roadmap for others to come through. It was a perfect time for that. And again, many people weren't doing it. So, um, not saying, and I think HBCUs are very important, but if they choose to go to other institutions, it's making sure that they have those foundational awareness that, yeah, this is possible.
Mhm.
Does that make sense, Charles?
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
Okay.
It does. It does. So how do you help students discover their purpose?
That's where we have for the Leadership Academy. That's where we had the making sure we do this. There's student profiles that we have that's in place, but also figuring out and we're getting with the like I work with a couple of the parents and the students to figure out what they want to do. We expose them to areas and job families that they might be interested in. So I think the biggest thing is exposure. We don't do one-on-ones. We do it group settings. So if we're going to a college campus and we're having a career day, or if we're going to NASA in Alabama and they're seeing different job opportunities and they're seeing space for the first time, that broadens their horizons. So that's why I think it's really important. And we take them out the country a couple times a year as well. So those things are really something that help the 100 does to expose them to things that normally that they're not really exposed to. And that's from the educational standpoint.
So, what's the biggest challenge facing young leaders right now?
I think funding is a big challenge that they're having because there's a lot of cuts that's been happening, um, and also I would say funding is the big one, but also making sure that there are brothers that are in it make for the children and make sure they're for the cause. So those are the two that I think about a lot, but it really comes down to a lack of resources that are out there to make sure that we're giving the students more exposure and more opportunity. Yeah.
How do you balance empathy with structure in student leadership roles?
Are you talking about my time and Walla Walla or?
Well, I mean, with the student leadership roles, if there's any part or any time that you've done that, how did you balance that?
Can you repeat the question, Charles? I want to make sure I landed. Thank you.
How do you balance empathy with structure in student leadership roles?
Okay, so as a dean, what I did was I made sure that I told this to my students, like, don't put me in a situation where I have to do my job. And of course, right, as straightforward as that is, and of course, some people they did test the waters, but and also for me, that's why I was sort of the one that they went to the most, is because they saw that I was empathetic, but there's only a line that comes to that, because if students see that they can use that to their advantage, they would, right? So my biggest line that I would tell them as a student dean when I was in school was, don't put me in a situation where I have to do my job. And again, there would be cases where I would be in geometry or biology or calculus one period and having to be on res life and make those difficult calls on a student's fate the next period. And that's tough because you have to really make sure holistically you're on a board with the other deans, making sure that we're making a objective and a defined decision for the student's success. I was a student at the time, so yeah, that was definitely an interesting moment for me, for sure. For sure. That was the majority of my student life. So yeah.
So, what's a moment with a student that reaffirmed your calling?
Oh, what's the moment when the student reaffirmed my calling? I had a student reach out to me who graduated last month, early this month, and they sent me a text message, and they've been in the Leadership Academy for 5 years, saying how much that I have impacted their life and their journey. They told me what college they're going to, which is Alabama State. So it's things like that. When the students and when the parents reach out to me saying how much I've impacted their lives, that's where I'm kind of like, okay, this is the why that I'm doing it. It's reaffirmed.
So, so how do you prepare students for leadership beyond the classroom?
Beyond the classroom. So I think that comes down to how critical the Leadership Academy is, because we have it in different modules where we're teaching entrepreneurship, there's public speaking, we take them out the country. We make sure we expose them to different facets of life. We teach them personal finance. Um, we teach them the stock market exchange and African American history. So the things that they're not learning in school, we teach them in at the Leadership Academy, and I think that really helps them have transferable skills when they go into the real world. Because again, we try to take the curriculum of what they're not learning into the classroom, or what they're not learning at home, and what they could be learning or what they're learning from subject matter experts and masters in their field, professionally, and kind of going from there with that. And that's the approach.
Okay. So we talked, prior to the interview, and I told you that we do Black History 365. And I asked you, who were the most influential people in Black history in your life and career? You told me Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Oprah Winfrey. Can you tell us, how has Dr. King shaped your leadership philosophy?
Oh, wow. At a young age, he was a trailblazer of what he was doing, ensuring that we had equality for all people. And so the situations that he was putting himself in, I think he died when he was 39, I believe. So he was, you look at who he was, and at that age, and you see that he was dealing with so much, and he was being all these big giants for all these people, because he wanted the next generation to have an opportunity. And there's a quote that he says that still stays with me. It says, "Not everyone could be famous, but everyone can be great, because greatness is determined by service." And
Wow.
what blows me away with Dr. King is that his ability to do that at a young, both him and Malcolm X, they were at young ages, making history, making good trouble. That,
Right.
to me, I was learning that in school, and I was learning about the protesting and all that, and at a young age, and I was like, wow, that's something it's commendable. So I want to be like that. So those are the two individuals that really stays with me for sure. Their teachings.
So, what aspects of King's moral courage resonate most with you?
Wow. He also has a quote that says, I don't care too much about, and I'm paraphrasing, the loudness of my enemies, but the silence of my friends.
Mhm.
So making sure that you're doing the right thing, and you're making sure that you're having good people galvanized around you to do the right thing, no matter what. And also being, I would say, clocking in so many ways, the people that are not the people you're gonna expect detractors. I've had my share of haters. I still do. I mean, that's how it goes. But it's the silence of your friends. That's the ones that are kind of like, wow, okay. Yeah. That's a the show topic for me.
So, how does Malcolm X influence your discipline and self
Oh,
determination?
you said the word discipline. Being incarcerated, also all this stuff at a young age that he was able to do and able to succumb, and really having this movement um, that galvanized our people at a young age. So I'm going to say this over and over again. All these people were all these big giants at the ages that I was, doing these big things on a global level. Um, that's why I am in reverence of both Malcolm X and Dr. King, because they were able to make their stamp in the world. But none of this was about them, and they put their lives on the line to ensure that people behind them had opportunities, equal opportunity. And that's something that I learned, and it stays with me. Those are two of my biggest heroes for sure. For sure.
So, so tell us, what do you admire most about Malcolm X's evolution as a leader?
I think his perseverance. I think his hunger. I think the fact that his his willingness and his openness to learn and to teach, and to also just be okay with evangelizing into others as to how we can move forward as a culture. He was the culture shifter. He was
Mhm.
truly the culture shifter. That's what I learned from Malcolm X for sure. And just to teach that to the other generations around him, and be unafraid to do so. I think the
Mhm.
grit that they both had as well is something that has passed down. That's something that I hope that I can just be 1/4 of, for sure.
So, just when you think about it, from Malcolm X's perspective and what you learned from him, how do you teach these things and these teachings to your students?
I would say from Malcolm X's point of view and from Dr. King's, it all comes down to, and now it's different. Of course, the tides are different now. So you have to, of course, know your audience, but being unapologetic and how you show up, not only for yourself, but for your community and for your family is extremely important. But the legacy that you're wanting to leave, I start trying to teach them, we talked about legacy earlier. What do you want to leave behind? To make sure people not only remember it, but they can learn something. And what doors can you make sure that you're leaving behind? Because there are people that are watching you.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things that I try to instill with the 100 that I have done, for sure, for sure.
So, how has Oprah Winfrey influenced your approach to storytelling and purpose?
She was a sister that was a black sister that took a shot on herself. I admire. I think I told you about the story with the jet. She said, I wanted to own myself, and I wanted and I read somewhere where her lawyers at the time said to her, okay, you do this, you take the risk that if it may not work, you lose everything, but if it does work, you win big. And she's like, well, I'm taking the risk because I own my name. So I think the biggest thing with Miss Winfrey is her ability to own herself and to take a chance in herself and be unapologetically owning herself. And with the storytelling part, oh wow, the best to ever do it. Yeah, the eye contact, the body language, making sure she gets to the core of the questioning. Yeah, all of it.
So, what lessons from Oprah's journey do you apply to your own life?
No matter what setbacks that comes your way, no matter what kind of detractors that you have, uh, uh, which is expected into the field that you're in, you can always remember your why and always remember that taking a bet on yourself is the best bet that you can do, period. Always make sure you bet on yourself. That's what I learned from her at a very, very young age.
So, what do these three icons collectively shape? How do they shape your worldview?
They are black icons that took a chance to step outside what the norms were, what societal norms were, and to really create something that was not only lasting, but again, I talk about leaving the door open for people behind them to come join and be a part of and to shape, and so they could see that, like the young man that's on the floor on TV, or they can read about something that they could one day be. That's what I see with those three people, is that they were because I am, right? So they were the seed because I get to be the fruit. You know,
Okay.
what I'm saying? And um, there's this quote by Maya Angelou that I love that says that I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. So just seeing those three help me stand proud as 10,000, even though I'm coming as one. Knowing that I got my ancestors and all these big leaders behind me that's helping me go along the way.
So, what does it mean to carry their influence into modern leadership?
All of it's very transferable for sure. But for me is how can you still be lasting? How can your legacy be lasting? How are you leaving an impression, or how are you leaving a situation that's better than you found it? That's how I approach That's how I approach each and every problem that I face. That's how I approached my career. That's how I approached when I was a dean. That's how I approached, my time in the 100 is how can I leave this place better than when I found it? So that's to me, that's the core of it for sure.
How do you honor their legacy through your work?
As cliche as it sounds, being the best that I can be, but also opening the door for others to see that it's possible. For me, it's all about opening doors. It's all about opening doors.
So, what message from King, Malcolm, or Oprah do you want the next generation to internalize?
And I'm going to quote it again because I think it's so super important, if I may, that not everyone can be famous, but everyone can be great because greatness is determined by service. So when you serve others, you're destined for greatness because it's never about you. That's the message that I try to leave, and everything that I was blessed with. If I could be honest for a second, I got the top 40 award. I think it's October of last year, and there was a period where I was sitting down and I was kind of like, they call each other's names, and then they go through the body of work that they've been a part of. And there was a period when I was like, how the hell did I? Because they're calling judges and prosecutors, etc. And then I just had to stop myself and I remind myself, like, and it's not imposter syndrome. I realized that it's not imposter syndrome, but it was self-sabotage. I'm like, no, I know how I got here. But the fact that, Tyler Perry and Stacey Abrams got the same award, there are other examples of people who saw a Malcolm X and a Dr. King and Oprah Winfrey, and they saw that these things are possible. And they were able to transfer and open doors and opportunities for these young people. So you could see it replaying over and over and over again. So just doing our part.
So tell us, what's next for Gregory?
What's next for Gregory? I told my dad recently that late last year when I got this award that I needed to take some time. I needed because I was, it talked about my life. I've been operating at Mach 5 forever. Just the next. I really need to take some time to just smell the roses. And so I think right now I'm just really, I'm appreciative of the experience, but I'm also just taking my time. I've never in my entire career or even college was able to take my time. So now I'm just stepping back a little bit. That's what's next for me.
So in that whole process, what can we expect, for you in the 100? I mean, how is your leadership situation going there? Is that advancing?
That the 100 actually was a decision that I did to step back this year. So that was one thing that I had to, because it's a lot of work. I mean, you're working with all these students, you're working with these different personalities. So that was one thing that I really had to step back and that was hard. But I still, of course, keep in contact with the parents and a lot of stuff. So I'm running interference, obviously, but that's one of the things that I had to take off my plate because it was overwhelming, for sure.
So can we expect a book?
You know what? I've been asked my entire, I'm not even kidding, since college to write a book. And my challenge was, I often say, and I'm going to be real with you, I struggle with accepting this interview. I'm like, because I was telling one of my friends, like, what in the hell do I have to talk about? And they reminded me of my journey, a little bit about my journey. So it's coming, but I just have to get out of my head saying, I want to make sure that I come and have something to talk about. So that's what's really pretty much holding me back, if I'm being remotely honest. And that's deprecating. I don't know what it is, and I'm being organic and raw here. But yeah, that's the only thing that's holding me on because I have to have something tangible to talk about.
Okay. So, in closing, can you do you have any words of wisdom and encouragement that you'd like to leave for our audience? Tell them how to connect with you via social media, their websites, things about the 100, where they can catch you at, all of those good things.
All right, so I don't have a social media. I do have a LinkedIn. So, you can find me, Gregory Hannah Jones, at LinkedIn. But if anybody's watching, just know that to keep like none of the work that we're doing is about us, and having a great attitude will open many, many doors than you can possibly imagine. And yeah, I'm just going to close by saying, greatness is always determined by service. It's always determined by serving others.
Well, before I close, I'm going to close with a monologue, but when I do close the show, do you have a couple of minutes where you can stick around after after I
Absolutely,
close?
for sure, yes, sir.
For those of you that are out there watching the show, I want to ask each and every one of you, as I've asked a time before, but I want to reiterate this point today, is that when it comes to comments and questions that you put in the chat, I ask you to please be respectful of what you put in the chat. I'm quite sure those of you that are putting these crazy comments in the chat, you know exactly who I'm talking to. I'm going to ask you nicely, on air, publicly, in front of everybody that's watching now. Bigotry is not a part of this show, and you will not be a part of this show. We are not about the sideshow that's being ran here in America. This is about realness. This is about real culture. And this is about real people, real situations, real stories with real leaders. So unless you want to come to the show and you want to be respectful, I ask you to please do not, and I repeat, please do not be a part of this show where you leave these ugly comments. For those of you that are respectful, I ask if you have not yet subscribed to any of our channels, especially our YouTube channels, please, if you would, please support us by subscribing and enabling all notifications, where you're able to catch the shows live, as well as able to go back and watch all of our great leaders that have been here, that's doing things to honor and put faith in our communities. So in closing, Gregory Jones reminds us that leadership is not a destination. It is a discipline. It is the daily choice to show up, to serve, to build, and to believe in the potential of others. His journey reflects the spirit of Dr. King's moral vision, Malcolm X's unwavering self-determination, and Oprah Winfrey's transformative power of storytelling and reinvention. In Gregory, we see a new generation of leadership, one that blends innovation with compassion, strategy with service, and ambition with purpose. His work in government, mentorship, and community empowerment is not just shaping DeKalb County, it is shaping the future of Black leadership in America. As we close tonight's episode, we honor his commitment, his clarity, and his courage. We celebrate the truth that when leaders move with intention, communities rise with them. This has been episode 82 of America in Black and White. I am Charles King. Thank you for watching, and remember, the story of our people is still being written one leader at a time. You guys have a great evening. We will see you tomorrow evening, same time. Have a great night.